Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Friday Nights on the Bayou. Here with my co-host Jace LeJeune. Most of the time, if not all the time. We're also joined here by Ken Trahan of Crescent City Sports. Ken, how's it going?
Hey, it's that time of the year. Busy, but doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So first, we're going to start off with the Catholic League, league that you're very familiar with as a Rummel grad. What are some of the expectations for the Catholic League this year?
Well, I think it's probably going to be the most competitive maybe we've ever seen, which is saying a lot considering the history of that league and the people that have participated in that league for an elongated period of time, those that are still in the league and those that have moved on to other particular districts. When you look at the 8 teams comprising this league, you can't find one team in there that is not a solid or good team. And in some cases, they're exceptional. And I dare say that at least 5 of those teams would have a chance to be at least quarterfinal teams, if not further. And certainly of those 5, I think those would have a chance to win a state championship. And I think history suggests that, but also the composition of the rosters and the players returning. And I should also add, of course, how well coached these teams are. I mean, it's as good as I've ever seen, guys.
Yeah, Ken, and good talking with you again. I know it's been a while since we caught up, but I know the Catholic League is always really tough. I mean, year in, year out, everybody says it's like the SEC West. I mean, it's just teams really beating each other up. And then when you add in Carr and the Carr, you add Warren Eason to the mix, it just brings it to a whole different level. But this year, I mean, me and Grant got a chance to see and the Carr in the spring, and they looked really good against Chachere. To you right now, who do you think is the favorite heading into the season in a very tough Catholic League?
I'd probably start with Carr
Mm.
based upon players returning. The talent level is obviously there. The coaching is clearly there. The expectations are clearly there. And I think that right now I'd probably give a slight edge to Carr, but clearly that's a slight edge. You never discount John Curtis. Uh,
Mm.
the Patriots are superbly coached, highly motivated. They have a tough job replacing a terrific quarterback, among others, but they don't rebuild, they reload, as we know, and they're going to be an extremely good football team. Warren Easton has enormous size on both sides of the ball. We know they have team speed. There's no question they'll translate well to this league, and they'll certainly be a significant factor. Archbishop Rummel was really maybe a storm away from being in the dome last year and possibly, quite possibly, winning it all when they were tied going to the fourth quarter in Baton Rouge against Catholic, and really had taken the control somewhat of the game, and then the storm interrupted, and they had to come back and play the next day. And they had endured enormous injuries. They lost 8 starters during the year, and they still accomplished that. So you can't discount the Raiders either. Then when you talk about Brother Martin, you're talking about a team that's consistently good, that's extremely well coached, that you're going to have to beat them. They have a really good defensive front. They've got good receivers, and they're good in the back on defense. So I think that's another really good football team, and the numbers suggest that on a year-to-year basis. And they're just a couple of years removed from playing in the state championship game as well. Holy Cross had a really good season last year. They did graduate some great receivers and a quarterback, but they've got really good running backs, and they've got a really good receiver back in Finn, and they're good. They're still a good football team, and Scott Wandy's done a great job there, so they'll absolutely be a factor. Jesuit is going to be better offensively than it was a year ago when they weren't very good at all. They'll be solid defensively, and I think they'll be closer to where they were when they reached the state championship game in 2021. And I saved St. Augustine for last because I think they're the absolute sleeper here.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the fact that they couldn't win a league game a year ago, despite the fact that they had talent, and they changed coaches, and they brought in a state championship coach, Robert Valdez, who's taken 2 different schools to state championship games, and he's instilled discipline. He's instilled a good system, and they've caught on pretty quickly. Anyone that sees, what they're doing right now, anyone who saw any part of their scrimmage that they had with Destrian understands this is a really serious football team with great potential. And could they rise to that level? Yes, I believe they can. So, I mean, that's 8 schools right there. That's 8 teams, all of whom have a good prognosis. And it's one of those leagues where it wouldn't shock me if somebody lost 2 games and either for the league championship or won it. The only issue with that is it's gonna hurt you in terms of seeding because you've got St. Thomas More, you've got Catholic that while they play tough schedules, they don't play districts like that overall. Right. So it's week to week. I mean, you can look at the schedules, and I think one schedule that stands out, and then I'll move on, is, if you look at Rummel's schedule, aside from playing those 7 district games, they're playing Lafayette Christian, at U High, and Archbishop Shaw. So not only do you not get a break, the biggest thing is somehow staying healthy when you play a schedule like that for 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually what me and Jace were talking about before you hopped on, was just how tough Rummel's schedule is. I mean, it's kind of important that they get off to a strong start, because after their game against Shaw, it's right into Catholic to play with Curtis. So they need to get off to a hot start pretty soon. But before we move off the Catholic League, I want to ask about St. Aug. Do you expect them to have a slow rise or a rapid rise like Holy Cross did last year?
No, I think they'll be really good from the start. I think every indication in the offseason points to that. And as I mentioned before, Valdez has a system in place and how he goes about his business that has been extremely well received. And this is not a criticism of anybody that's been at St. Augustine in recent years, but let's face it, they've had a ton of turnover. I mean, ever since Tony Villegas, they've gone through an enormous number of coaches, and some of these guys were good. And David Johnson was very good, but David, moved on to the college level. So, and since that time, they've had coaches that were good, but never quite had the right fit. Cyril Crutchfield had really the best team in Louisiana in 2013, and they lost in the semifinals to Rummel in a rematch game, and Rummel won their 2nd straight title. And that one, of course, was Leonard Fournette's team, when they had 13 kids scholarships, and they just didn't finish the deal and probably faced the only team that could have beaten them in the semifinals, just a bad draw, and had to play the game as a road team, even though they'd beaten that team in the regular season. That's since been fixed, and the higher seed will be the home team in the semifinals. So, look, I think that, the expectations on AP2 are incredible. A lot of alumni there still think it's the 1970s in terms of the ability to win. And that's just not accurate, because things have changed. There are a lot more schools. And also, since they won in 1979, the world's changed, the landscape's changed, and young African-American men are going to the other Catholic schools, and they're going to the other private schools. And it's no longer just almost a ritual, birthright to go to St. Augustine. And so I think that's also, and then of course facility. St. Augustine is really improving that with a brand new football field, a practice field, which is enormously important. The gym, of course, which has taken a couple of years to get up and running, certainly is going to help. The locker room facility obviously is going to be improved, and these were all things that needed to happen, because again, it's an arms race of sorts. You look around the league and you see what other people have, and look, I mean, those schools are really good schools too, and they want those same young men. So it's not the 70s, but St. Augustine can be that program again, and it wouldn't shock me if they break through this year and become that program and get as far as the semifinals, if not further than that.
Yeah, Ken. And I really have one more question about the Catholic before we move on, because me and Grant had this conversation too about it. But it seems to me like I have Endicott as one of my top 2 or 3 teams in the state overall coming back this year. And we basically are trying to figure out, okay, what's that second team? Because like you said, Rummel is coming off a semifinal appearance last year. About John Curtis, what they're going to be at Holy Cross. We rattled off the teams. But for you, what team you think has the best shot of overtaking Endicott, just entering the season with that group?
Yeah, I think all of those schools would have a shot. I mean, I think the best opportunities would certainly be for St. Augustine, for John Curtis, for Rummel, and possibly even Warren Easton. And I don't want to leave any of the others out, because they're that good. I mean, look, as I said before, and sometimes it's matchups. Some people match up well with others, and that's just kind of how it works. And I mean, John Curtis is hard to beat. Almost been able to go like 50-50 with them since they've competed with each other, and yet Curtis will dominate others. And then, the Carr Curtis thing has gone back and forth. Carr wins easily, then Curtis wins easily. So again, matchups matter and year to year matters. But like I said before, it's not waffling at all. But I think it's week to week in that league. As I mentioned before, I do think if I had to pick one, it would be Carr. That doesn't mean they're going to win it, but I think they have a great chance to do that. And if I had to pick a second team right now, I mean, it's hard to get past John Curtis, obviously, based on success, Rumble based on success. But again, watch out for St. Augustine. I would absolutely put them in that position.
Yeah, and some other schools in the North area, there's a lot of buzz, and one of them is Shaw. I mean, Archbishop Shaw. They've seen a resurrection over the past few years with Hank Kearney taking over the program. I believe back in 2022. Yeah, 2022. Is this team the team that will finally reach the mountaintop and bring back a state championship to Shaw for the first time since 1987?
Well, I mean, I think the expectations are clearly in that realm. The excitement level is huge. The numbers are incredible. They're up to 100 kids in the program. They've got size, they've got speed, they've got coaching. What else do you want? And the other thing about that is St. Thomas More's moved up. So that doesn't hurt at all because they obviously dismissed Shaw last year as they did everybody, including Lafayette Christian. So, look, I think the chances for Shaw are awfully good. I think the expectations are clearly there. I think it's all met. Look, the enrollment in the school has increased dramatically in just a couple of years, and it's all, not all of it, but much of it is attributed to the athletic program and to football in particular. The basketball program has been tremendous under Wes Laurendine. That 4A does a good job in baseball, certainly in wrestling. I could go on and on. They've just had a renaissance there, and of course, for so many years, they've been exporting young men to the other schools and crossing the bridge. Go to in Rummel. I mean, look at Bolton Park Jace, John Curtis to Jesuit to Brother Martin to De La Salle. And now their moniker is a West Bank thing. And they've done a great job of being able to get West Bankers to come back home in the last 2 years. And I think that's only going to grow. And with the football team, like I said, you always look to the most important position, quarterback. And they've got that. They've got a dual threat, young man who's really good. And when you have that guy at that position, you have a great chance. And that's not all they have, as I mentioned. They've got size and speed and extremely good coaching. So, look, I would expect nothing short of getting to the semifinals for Archbishop Shaw this year. You got to get the right draw. You got to stay healthy. St. Charles Catholic's moved up to Division II. And while they're not going to look like Shaw or a few other teams from a physical perspective, they're awesome. I mean, they just play the game so. Know about Lafayette Christian, who they are. So, look, I expect Shaw to be a team that will get at least to the semifinals. And yes, I do think they have a chance to get back to the championship. The last time that, they've done it, 5 times, 6 times. They did it as a 4A team several times under Scott Bainsfather. They did it under Coach Tierney back-to-back in 87 and 88 when they're at the top class.
And speaking of teams that have had really great runs, Ken, just the last couple of years, I mean, St. Charles Catholic, what a run they really had. And you'd think, replacing a legend like Frank Monica, there will be some setback, but there's not. I mean, Coach Wayne Stein has really taken to a whole different level. But I know they're graduating a senior class that was probably the most successful in their school's history. So for St. Charles Catholic coming to another year, I know they're going to be well coached. It seems like they always are. But with a young team coming in, do you see somewhat of a rebuilding type of year for the Comets this year?
Yeah, I don't know that they ever rebuild. They don't have the talent level they've had the last few years, but all you need to do is look at history under Frank Monica and then look at what Wayne Stein's done in 3 years. They're a play away from winning 3 straight state championships. As they lost to Calvary Baptist, a game they easily could have won a year ago in a game we broadcast. But look, they've lost the preponderance of starters, as many as 16, 17 but they are so well coached, so well prepared, and if they're close to you, they're going to beat you. Their special teams are off the charts. I don't see anybody that plays the special teams game, the kicking game, like St. Charles Catholic every year. In a close game, they beat you because they're going to make a play in the kicking game. The defense is going to bend, but it's not going to break. Their offense is going to be efficient. It doesn't change from year to year. The names change, the faces change, but the results don't. So I'm never going to sell the Comets short. Look, this year will be a big challenge for Coach Stein based upon the losses incurred, but I fully expect to see St. Charles Catholic playing at least into the round of 8, if not the round of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely, most definitely. Another team that I want to mention too is JFK. I mean, under Linares Page, they've really become one of the better teams in this area, despite being kind of a relatively new program as the school, rebranded. And they were founded, I think, about 10. We reopened up after Katrina like 10, 15 years ago. And the last few years, they've been to the quarterfinals, and this year they bring another great team back. So, what are the expectations down on Paris Avenue?
Very high. I mean, look, Linares is a friend. He's a great guy. He's a great player, at Carver and Tulane. And he just completely changed everything when he got there. When the school opened as Lake Area New Tech, Derek Lewis, a good friend of mine, shepherded the program and basically recreated it. And I thought Derek did a good job. And Linares came in after the fact, a coach removed from Derek, and he's made it something different. And I think the rebranding to John F. Kennedy and embracing the past and the history has made a huge difference. The support level has been enormous. They're Cougars again. They went back to the colors of royal blue and of course, yellow gold. And we all know, those of us from here know the history. John F. Kennedy, was on Bayou St. John there in Wisner, and Hurricane Katrina wiped the school out. And it was gone for many years. And as I mentioned, when they rebranded Lake Area New Tech, there was a significant push from alumni of JFK to try to bring back the brand. And they pushed and pushed and pushed, and they got it done. And my grandmother was an original librarian at JFK. So there's a rich history. And to see that school be recreated under that brand was pretty special to a lot of people, myself included. And to see Linares running the program is really heartwarming because he's a terrific guy, but he's a really good coach. And just ask Hank Tierney. I mean, they had to escape basically beating JFK last year. The Cougars outgained them 2 or 3 to 1 in the game, in that quarterfinal game. So, look, John F. Kennedy's going to be here to stay. People want to play there. The school is a good school. The facilities are really nice, and they've created a winning culture. And they got a guy running the program that people want to play for. And I think those things are very important in the grand scheme of things. And school choice is a big deal. And we know the one-app system and everything else that exists. So I fully expect John F. Kennedy to stay in that realm of being where they've been the last couple of years. This is a football team that won 8 to 11 games, and I think it's going to stay that way. I don't think that's going to change.
2 more teams I want to ask you about, Ken. Newman, obviously, they've been a team that's been really knocking on the door of going to that state championship, trying to really break that semifinal hump and go over that hump, basically. And it seemed like they were pretty much written off. It seems like when Arch graduated, but it seems like that they're even better and better football team off of last year, and they're at pretty much at a time where they can probably come and overcome that hump, that hurdle this year for a state championship, basically about Newman and then De La Salle. I know De La Salle had a lot of really good runs as well under Coach Manali, and they're trying to get that back from a couple years ago. So what are your expectations for both the Cavaliers and the Greenies?
Well, they play each other in a jamboree this Friday night, so there's that at Lupin Field. Coach Stewart's done a great job at his alma mater for a long time. And I like to say that he kind of withstood or survived the circus that existed a couple of years ago with all of the attention paid to Arch Manning. And Arch is a great young man, and he's a terrific talent. But the attention locally, statewide, and nationally was a bit much. And you have to manage that program because it's not about one person. And Nelson, I thought, did a great job under difficult circumstances, being forced to bring in a coach and everything else imaginable. And he's such a class act. He's handled it all in wonderful fashion. And I think you're right. I think team-wise, they're every bit as good, if not better, than they were when Arch was a senior. They've got a quarterback that's outstanding and runs what they run extremely well, and he's good at pretty much everything he does. They got size. I mean, they're big up front. The question with Newman has always been, once they get to that round of 8 or round of 4, do they have enough athletes? Do they have enough speed to deal with teams that they face that have that kind of speed? That's been, the one bugaboo that's kind of stopped them. And of course, Calvary Baptist is in that bracket, and they're so good, and they're that good again. So that's always going to be very difficult to have a school like that that you're going to have to deal with. So the hope there is that you're able to avoid a team like that until you get to the championship. And if you can get on the other side of the bracket, that would make a huge difference. They played Calvary Baptist really good last year. Went up there to Shreveport, played them a 1-score game. So I think that's a testament to how good Newman can be this year with the players returning. With regard to De La Salle, Graham Jarrett, another alumnus of his school, really fine coach, who got there from Rummel, where he was part of a state championship team in 19. Graham had a tough act to follow because Ryan took that team to 3 state championships in 9 years and inherited a program where he had about 22 players. And I saw it grow, and it was remarkable. But Graham's a really good football coach, and he's got a really good quarterback. Arsenault's a talented guy. He can really throw the ball, moves pretty well. They're a little bigger up front this year, more like they were under Coach Manali, which I think will make a difference as well. The schedule's challenging, but it's manageable for them at some of their games. And I fully expect that they'll be a team that absolutely will be a round of 18 and with a chance to go beyond. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have the quarterback, and Newman and De La Salle both have those guys, then you've got a great chance. And that makes a difference. You mentioned the Catholic League earlier. Carr's got a quarterback returning. He's good. Almost got a quarterback returning. He's good. I mean, I can name the teams. When you look at the teams that have quarterbacks with experience and talent, those are teams you're always going to look at as having a chance to go deep.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Newman going up to Calvary and playing as well as they did just kind of shows you how good they really can be, especially a year after they lose a guy like Arch. I mean, Eli Friend, had a tough act to follow, especially just given how successful Arch was during his time at Newman, and also being the number 1 overall quarterback in the country. So a lot of people kind of wrote off Newman after Arch left, but I don't think a lot of people realized how much talent they were returning back. And not only that, they were bigger. They're bigger, a lot more physical now than they were at any point under Arch. But moving on to the river parishes, I know we already talked about St. Charles Catholic, but I want to talk about Destrand. Destrand is also one of the students that returns their quarterback. And they also returned 4 really good receivers, which 3 of them are actually blue chip recruits, or what you consider blue chip recruits. Is it unreasonable to think that Destrand right now is one of the favorites to win the state championship this year?
Of course they're a favorite. I mean, they've got a quarterback that can throw it 50, 60 yards. He's got size. He can make every throw, and he's got really good receivers to be able to get the ball to. So, they had a bowling ball running back that was really good, but I think the focal point now will be throwing the ball for Destrahan. They've got athletes, and look, as I've said for years, in watching professional sports and doing pro games and college games and high school games, the coaches that are successful are the ones that adhere to the talent rather than the other way around. You adapt your philosophy and your schemes to fit your talent. You don't try to get your talent to fit your schemes. So, and I think you see the evidence of that with Destrahan. You go from being a predominantly running football team to where the passing game will become much more in focus because you have that kind of talent on hand. So I fully expect they'll be able to throw the ball extremely well. They'll still run it well enough because they've got talent. Marcus Scott is a longtime friend. Marcus is an inspiration. He's gone through a lot of things, and he's, to see him refreshed physically, having surgery, with, a story I broke and was sitting on for a few years, is a blessing. And look, he's done a great job. And again, when you follow a legend, and Steve Robichaux was a legend and did a phenomenal job at Destrahan. He's a great coach and a great guy. It's hard to do, to accept that mantle and to be able to have the kind of success that Coach Scott has had. Speaks volumes about his character and it's about his ability and his courage. So, no, Destrahan is unquestionably a favorite. When you're talking about non-select Division One, they're going to be there. We know what Ruston is. We can talk about the teams every year that are going to be in that mix, that are going to be Zachary is going to be in that mix. We know who they are on a year-to-year basis, and Destrahan is stamping itself as being in that mix every year, and certainly this year will be no exception.
Shifting gears to one of Destrehan's big rivals, and that's Hanville. And I know Greg Boyne comes in for his first year with Hanville, but there's a lot of talent on this team. I know the last couple of years have been underachieving years for them, but they really have a really talented running back in Calvin Smith. So they got some offensive talent on that team. And from what I've heard, I know Graham was at the scrimmage, that they've looked really good in that scrimmage. So just basically expectations for Hanville and trying to reclaim some of those glory years. And
It's such a passionate fan base, and it's such a tradition-rich program, and the facilities are second to none. And Greg is richly deserving of the opportunity. He's paid his dues immensely for many years. He's a homegrown guy there, and he's coming from the rival at Destrehan. So there's a deep understanding of what it's going to take to be that program, having been at Destrehan most recently. And he understands and really does accept the tenets of what they want at Hanville. I mean, as I mentioned, it's a very passionate fan base. They expect you to win all the time. And I've spoken there, and when you see the passion, it's unreal. And look, they go back to Coach Groh and what he was able to establish, and Darren Barbier and what he was able to accomplish. Even Scott Hildebrand, who got to a state championship game, and Lou Valden, who did what he did, and Nick Saltzformaggio, who got him to a state championship game. They expect that from their coaches. They haven't had that recently. And obviously, that's why they made a change. And Greg, as I mentioned before, he's a Hanville guy, and he richly is prepared for this based on what he's done, and he understands what it's going to take to get there and what the talent level looks like of a team of that caliber, having been at Destrehan. So Hanville's going to be better. I don't think they're a state championship threat yet, not at this stage. But I certainly think in that particular district, East St. John's always going to be there and have a shot. Parabone's fine as well, but I do think that Hanville right now has a good chance to possibly be that second team.
Yeah, and another power program that's in the River Parishes, of course, is Lutcher. Lutcher last season, they were the defending state champions, but they fell short in the quarterfinals. So a really good Opelousas team who really, even though they were ranked the 13th seed, I mean, they were really close to a top 5 seed in terms of talent. What do you expect of the Bulldogs this year, especially when they return 15 starters and 10 of those starters on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I thought last year was going to be a transition year because you graduated a do-everything quarterback who was phenomenal and took that team on his back. And that's not to detract or take away from any other players on that team, but they played in a division that frankly wasn't very deep, and they rode one guy. And did they ever ride him? It was our most valuable player for the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club and all the entities I'm involved with to a state championship. So there was going to be a drop-off offensively last year, and I covered the scrimmage last year with Destrehan, and you can see right away offensively there were going to be some challenges. Defensively, they were tough, and they got a little bit better offensively as the season went on, but they didn't have quite enough to get to where they were previously. But a year down the road, a lot of those players that played last year gained a lot of experience, and as a result, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're better. And I think the tradition there is obviously incredible. I mean, River Parish football in general, like that. I talked about the passion at Hanville. Look, I spoke at the Lutcher's quarter, and it's always the same. They fully expect you to win. They always have. They always will. And that's just the nature of who Lutcher is. And I fully expect that they'll be that team again. I think they'll go beyond where they were last year. I fully expect they'll contend for a state championship.
Well, two teams that were contending for state championships last year, and they just fell on the short stick of on the end of things. And that's Riverside Academy and St. James. St. James lost in a 2-point conversion. Really came down to the wire there against Union Parish. So those two teams coming back, and I'm sure they're motivated as ever to get right back to the Superdome and contend for a state championship this year.
Well, Riverside, I mean, again, was a player or two short of winning it all last year. They've got a remarkable player in Lasty who doesn't look the part, he never will, but boy, is he a good player. They're good up front. Lee Roussel's an offensive line coach. So everywhere he's been, his offensive lines have been good, if not really good. They maximize their potential schematically, and what they teach, he does a phenomenal job in that regard. They, again, much the same. I'll speak there in a week, as I always do, and they are going to be, I think, if not the favorite, a co-favorite to win it. They're that good. Again, they raised the bar last year. This is a terrific program. Mickey Roussel established it over many years as being that kind of program. And then, of course, Bill Stubbs did a great job there in his stay. And now they're really back to that level. And hiring Lee was a brilliant stroke. He is a River Parish guy, and he's a guy that understands the community. He understands toughness. They're going to embrace that philosophy. When they hired him, they knew what they were going to do philosophically, and it's paid off. They're a very physical, come at you football team that you've got to match up with. If you don't stand up to them, you're not going to beat them. And I certainly think that with the talent they have coming back and the coaching they have, and a diminutive running back who plays large, they're right there. As I mentioned, I think they're one of two favorites to win a state championship. As for St. James, look, last year was a special season, and we keep talking about this. They're one play away. They need to convert. On one play, they convert, they win. They didn't convert, they give the other team the ball, goes down and scores, and they win. So Coach Davis is a great guy. The tradition there is with all the coaches that have been there. Rick Gilly did an incredible job for so many years, my friend, who worked with me. And then, of course, most recently, Robert Valdez was outstanding in his stint there. And Coach Davis has come in and done a great job. Brought in Chase Forkay to help coach quarterbacks. That's helped a lot. Look, they've got, I'm looking at their talent level, may not be what they've been overall the last couple of years, but they'll be good. I have no doubt about that. And again, it's a great stadium. It's a great setting, tremendous community support. As I said before, when you're talking about River Parish football, you can pretty much say that across the board with all these programs. It's a sense of community pride, whether it's Bashery, or Letcher, or Destran, or Booty and Hanville, or Edgard. I could go across the board then you go to Laplace. It's the same dynamic. Reserve. They have enormous support. East St. John, much the same at Keller, and they'll be good too. And Brandon Brown does a great job. So, look, love River Parish football. The passion is great. Doing games there and going there is always a blessing because of the way they treat you and the way they embrace you. So, look, all those schools you mentioned will be good, and West St. John will be better also.
Yeah.
And before we move on to North Shore, we only have a few more questions. I want to ask about Vanderbilt Catholic because they're in a very similar situation with Riverside and hiring a former Nichols assistant, Brian Wallace. And they also returned a fantastic running back. So what's to expect from the Terriers this year? Especially, I think they're, if I'm correct, I think they're EDY joining their league. I know they're in the same league as Letcher. I mean, that's going to be, I think there would be a team to watch for sure in this River Parishes.
Hey, Vanderbilt Catholic, look good. Good soccer school, good volleyball school. I can name all the sports. They've had success in girls basketball, and they've had some success in football, but they've always, in recent years, been second fiddle to E.D. White Catholic because of the job that Coach Lassane has done there. Look, the expectations are high. They made a good hire. I think you just hit on it more than anything else. If you're looking for a culture change, if you're looking for the opportunity to grow a program, it starts right there with a coaching hire. And I think that's extremely important. Mentioned Robert Valdez earlier. He went and got some college experience at Grambling. I think when you've had that experience like Coach Roussel, like both of these guys, what we just mentioned, I think it does make a difference. It gives you a different perspective. You learn different techniques that you bring back with you to the high school level, and in some cases it puts you maybe slightly ahead of others. So I fully expect the Terriers to be a better football team. E.D. White is still the best team in that region, but certainly I think Vanderbilt Catholic has a great chance now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about the North Shore a little bit. I know there's been some changes up there. They separated the divisions, of course. You got on one side you have Chalmette and all the Slidell schools. And then the other half, you have St. Paul's, Mandeville, Covington, you name it, schools to the west of Slidell. But I want to talk about these two schools in particular because they're both going to have great seasons this year. St. Paul's, of course, is bringing back a lot of talent. There's a lot of expectations over there at St. Paul's. And then also Mandeville, has all the tools to be a state title contender as they went to the semifinals last year. And they're supposed to play each other in Week 9 in what should be one of the bigger games in the New Orleans area. So what's it kind of looking like at both St. Paul's and Mandeville, and do you expect them to make a run for a state title?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the two best teams in that class on the North Shore for sure. If they're the two best teams on the North Shore, period, regardless of classification. Mandeville is Nate Shepard. He's a terrific football player committed to Duke now.
Mhm.
And Craig Jones is an innovative guy. We saw that at Lakeshore, and he's brought that to Mandeville. And to see how quickly they ascended was pretty impressive to get as far as they got a year ago. And they've got good players back. And they've been impressive in the offseason, whether it's 7-on-7 or in their scrimmage last week, Jamboree coming up this week. I fully expect that Mandeville is going to be a team that could again get as far as a round of 4. It's just a really good football team. St. Paul's got to the quarters last year, lost at home in the quarters, but look, they've got a good quarterback. They've got a good running back in Corrales. They've got size. They're tough up front physically. They'll get a standoff or beat most people up front. For St. Paul's, it's much like we talked about with Newman. When you get to that round of 8 or round of 4, do you have enough team speed to be able to compete with the elite teams in that class? Kenny Sears has been consistently good with this program. You can always pencil them in, for 8 to 10 wins every year. This year is no exception. And again, it's going to be a pretty good indication early about the schedule they play to see exactly where they're at, because I think they're good enough to get at least to the round of 8, if not further, this year with the talent they have returning. But those are the two best teams in my mind, certainly on the North Shore, man.
Yeah, and then Chalmette as well. I mean, I know they've been really consistent, with Coach Tucker over there. He does a really good job coaching the Owls and contending for district and some playoff runs. So, what are your expectations heading to the year about the Owls?
Yeah, I think they're in a district that they're with like schools now. I mean, I think they're like schools in terms of the school makeup, like schools in terms of the talent level. So I think that's an evenly matched league that they're in now. As we all know, they've been in what was District 8 5A for many years now, and what we call the Jefferson Parish League. And with all due respect to the other members of that league, East Jefferson won a state championship in 2013, but has not been close to that in recent years. And with the exception of John Aaron, nobody else in that league has really been a threat in football or really put the effort into it, frankly, as a whole. So what happened to Chalmette was simple, and that is that it was hard to accrue power points because once you got in the league play, you were going to hurt your power points. Your ranking was going to go down even if you won based upon the teams they were playing, other than when they played John Aaron. So having this league, keeping some of the remnants of the previous schedule and, continuing to play in Aaron and playing Holy Cross and such is going to help. And now, as I mentioned, playing in the league they're in, these are more evenly matched teams. Chalmette has to replace a bunch of players from a year ago, but they run a system, and what they do offensively, running the wing, you don't see it very much, and they do it very well. It's an extremely well-coached team. And they got Coach Tucker back from Riverdale, which helps also with their situation. I said Coach Tucker. I mean Coach Walker back to help them offensively from Riverdale. So look, I fully expect Chalmette will contend for a district championship. I would expect nothing less. They've been a team that can win a playoff game in recent years, but not get beyond that. With the talent level that's back this year, it's tough to project beyond the first round, but this is a solid, consistent football program.
And I got one last question before we let you go, Ken.
Yeah.
I want to ask about Amite and Kentwood. I know all Tangipahoa Whole Parish schools, was Ponchatoula, Independence, Amite, and Kentwood, they're all joining the select divisions. And Amite's joining the select division 3, which is always tough. And then Kentwood's also joining a pretty stacked select division 4. So how do you see those two teams faring in those new divisions?
Well, Kentwood is a tough place to play under the tank, first and foremost. And they've had a coaching change. And so it's going to be interesting to see the transition. Now it's top assistant that's taking over, and it's a very seamless transition because it was a handoff, and it was planned, and it was great. So I fully expect it's going to look the same. I don't think it's going to be any different. We know what Kentwood is. They sometimes their record's deceiving because they play a very tough schedule early on, and they'll lose games, but that's not an indication of who the Kangaroos are. I fully expect they'll be extremely competitive. What else would you expect from that program and what it's been able to produce over an extended period of time, dating back to Coach Career? With Amite, it's much the same. Zeph Powell overcame some health issues a couple of years ago, and we know what the Warriors have been and to play their stuff. We've done a bunch of games there, and just talking to him and doing a preview on his team, it's pretty obvious he likes what he has this year. And when he says he likes what he has, that's a pretty good sign because they always have good players.
Mm-hmm.
So the commitment's there, the passion is there. Those two teams are really good. You know, LaRanger has a really good running back, an outstanding sophomore running back for San Messina that I'd keep an eye on too. It's been a struggle for Independence for a long time now. You know, other teams in that region, Springfield, you know, obviously, you know, it's a not an easy situation, and they've tried to grow it. But Jules Sumner's a solid program. Ross Career does a good job. So, look, again, that's you get the tangible whole, and you talk about those teams. It pretty much always is going to start with Amy and Kentwood, and I don't think this year's any exception.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again for joining us. Once again, Grant Chachere, Jace LeJeune, your host for the Friday Nights on the Bayou podcast. And once again, thank you, Ken, for joining us. I know you're a pretty busy man, so it's always a good thing that you're able to take the time out of your day to come help join us to talk some New Orleans football.
I'm glad to do so, guys. Keep up the great work and keep supporting high school football. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Ken.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right, guys.